Okay, so what we're going to hopefully show you tonight is just kind of a quick and dirty way of making Second Life model sheets. One of the things that I've noticed is that folks are continually looking for these. Either they want to show off what they've got, or they want to have their avatar drawn by somebody, or whatever. So this is a pretty easy thing to do. Anybody with Second Life or Photoshop, GIMP, Paint.net, whatever, can do this pretty easily. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to do this using Firestorm, which is just a third-party Second Life client, and Photoshop, because Photoshop's what I know really well. So the real key to this is not necessarily knowing how to take pictures or anything like that. We're not looking for anything real arty here. We're just looking for a basic turnaround, and that's what I'm going to show you. So what we really need is we need the right tools. So the right tool in World is what I call a green box, and it's pretty standard. I'm sure you've seen this in making of type things for movies. The idea here is that we're going to surround our avatar, what we want to take a picture of, what we want to do that model sheet with a color that you probably won't see in real life, that we can easily edit out of our image. So what this basically is, this is just a hollow box with a floor. And what I've done is I've made the outside, whatever color. I've got this at my, my parcel, and so I kind of want it to blend in with everything else when I'm not looking at it full on. So I got the texture set to whatever I really want. But the inside is just kind of a full bright, ugly base neon green. The key here is this is not going to be a color that for the most part you're going to find on your avatar. If you really like neon green, then use neon pink or something. Just a consistent color set to full bright on all the inside corners of your light box here. Now inside the light box I've got two things. The first thing that I've got is just kind of a static pose ball, and this is really just for static poses. There's no way to change the pose. It won't move around. The character, won't move her arms or anything like that. So very consistent from shot to shot. The next one is more dynamic, and this is really personal preference. What I like to do is I like to do a short turnaround and then kind of a dynamic pose, just to kind of give an idea of flavor of the character. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how to do the short turnaround. So what we're going to do is go ahead and we're going to sit on the static one. And we'll zoom in, and all of a sudden, oh, your world has become completely green. It's disgusting. I hate this color. Anyways, so there's a couple things that we want to do here, or that we want to make sure of. I may already have it set on this viewer. I'm not sure. Yeah. So if we go into preferences and we go to graphics, there's a few things that we want to turn off. Obviously we want to turn off depth of field, because that will allow some parts of our character to be fuzzy. We also want to turn off ambient occlusion, because that will basically make it so some lights reflect back on us, and we really don't want that, because we want a consistent lighting. We also want to turn off lighting and shadows, because obviously we want some consistent lighting. We want to be able to see the detail, and lighting and shadows can obfuscate some of that. And then I always just turn off atmospheric shaders. I leave the basic shaders turned on simply because I've noticed with some avatars it will cause some unwanted effects. So as long as you have those four off and then the top four on, you should be fine. So the next thing we want to do is we want to set our lighting to a static highlight, or kind of soft, even light. Easiest way to do that is to go into World, go into Environment, or I'm sorry, go into Sun Position, and set it to midday. Or you can hit Control Shift Y, which is what I tend to use. Just it's a lot easier, a lot quicker. And as you can see, that changes the light tremendously, but it also makes it a little bit more even. Now there are some wind light settings that you can use that supposedly hide joins and prims a little bit better. They make an avatar look a little bit better, but for what we're doing here, this is fine. If you want to really get artistic about it, then you can start playing around with the wind light, but this will be fine. So the next thing you want to do is you want to kind of center your character in your screen. You want to try and center him top to bottom, and it's important to get as much of your character in view here as you can. And the reason for this is when we go into Photoshop, chances are you might want to scale this avatar up or scale them down to fit some of the other screens that you've got, or to fit the print size that you're trying to use. And if you have too little data, if you're zoomed all the way out, you can end up with some artifacting. It can look kind of strange. We don't really want that. So we try and get them as close as we can, as centered as we can, and really look for the eyes and make sure that the eyes are kind of straight on this full frontal shot here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn on my camera controls. I'm going to do that through the avatar menu and then down to camera controls. Voila. The reason for this is I don't want to change my perspective on my shot. Like if I were doing alt click to move around, notice how that changed my perspective almost immediately. Now see, now I'm going to have to go in here, I'm going to have to recenter, and there's no guarantee the next shot that I take is either going to be the same perspective or the same size. So use your camera controls to do the rotation instead of doing an alt click or anything like that. So the next thing you want to look for is, because of how perspective works, you want to make sure that when you do your turnaround of your character, so I get this nice, great, face-on shot here, right? I want to make sure that as I turn this character around, parts of her don't disappear off screen, because, well, I won't be able to capture that in a screenshot. Now you'll notice down here, the tip of the shoe is kind of disappearing into the menu bar down here. That's okay, because when we take our screenshot, we're not going to have the menu bar there. It'll show up. It'll be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate her until I get a good look at her eyeballs. And then we'll go ahead and click on our screenshot button. Now one thing that may happen is when you click on that screenshot button, your avatar may be looking off to the side, they may be watching your cursor, that sort of thing. Just hover your mouse over the screenshot menu here, and within about maybe 2-3 seconds their eyes will snap back to a forwards looking viewpoint. At that point you can go ahead and hit the little refresh button here. Okay. And then what we want to do is we want to snap this out to disk. So we're going to hit disk, and we'll say current window, because again, we want as much as we possibly can get data-wise. And I have my format set to PNG lossless, and the reason I have it set to PNG lossless is if I set this to JPEG, no matter what quality setting I use, maybe I'll get lucky with 100%, but I will have some sort of artifacting at some point, or I run the risk of it, if I don't always set the quality to 100%. So don't even mess around. Just go with PNG lossless. That way when we import this to Photoshop, it's very easy to remove all of this green, and that's what we're going to look to do. That's why we want, this green back here, so it's very easy to remove. The next thing you want to check is you want to make sure that under capture, you have interface and HUDs unchecked. And the reason for that is we don't want any of the UI elements to be in there. I mean, why would you? It just clutters things up. It could make it difficult to edit some of that green out. Who knows? So, don't even capture them. So I'm just going to refresh this real quick, make sure our eyes are open, and then we'll hit save. And we're going to go ahead and save this into my green screens folder. And there we go. There's our full-on shot. Now what I'm going to do, now you can, if you want, do the full model sheet where you do the, the full, the facial shot, 3/4, 1/2, and then show the back. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to do frontal shot and a side shot, and then we'll rotate her around for the back. And there we go. So now I have 3 files. Oop, you can't see that. I have 3 files in there, 3 green screens that I can use and I can import into Photoshop. And what we can do with these is we can edit out the green parts of it in Photoshop so that we have a nice clean model sheet that we can do whatever it is that we want to with. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. Now, to be honest with you, I cheated a little bit. Just in the interest of time, I decided to go ahead and duplicate some of the layers I had in another file. Really all I've duplicated is what I call height and floor. The idea here is that, and I'm sure you've seen this in like, let's say police mugshots, for example, where you have a grid behind your subject or behind what's going to be our model sheet to delineate height. So I want to go from 0 feet all the way up to 6 feet. You could go up to 7 or 8, or depending upon how tall your avatar is. I don't really care. But the idea here is that if somebody's looking at this, if I don't have this, they're not going to be able to really tell how tall that character is. So I like to have this sort of thing. I keep it as a separate layer in case I want to remove it for any reason. I mean, if I wanted to put like a different background on there or something like that. So the way I did that is I just enabled the rulers under Photoshop and just moved my way up the file, used the line tool, and created some equidistant spaced lines so that I can kind of tell where things need to be. And you'll see where this comes into play when we start trying to scale things out. So the next thing I'm going to pull up here is our green screens. As you can see, we got our 3 files here. So I'm just going to go ahead and select them and drag and drop them. So now you can see we've got all 3. We've got our front shot, side shot, back shot. So I'm going to go ahead and just arrange these so I know what's what here. So front, side, back. So this is where it's pretty easy. So this is already a pre-made file. It's wide enough to accommodate all 3 of these side by side and then some. I actually use this template for a number of different avatars. So there are some that only take up maybe a third of this document size. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and go into my first shot here. I'm going to use the rectangular marquee, and I'm just going to really simple cut and paste this out. So I get only that only that shot of the avatar with as minimal on the other sides as I need. And don't be too skimpy about getting it real close into the to the actual avatar. Give yourself some breathing room on the other side, and you'll see where that comes into play. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm just going to close that file out and paste it in. And then we'll use our move tool here just to kind of move this over to where I want it to be. We'll go to our next file, do the same, Control C, close it, cut, paste, there we go, and we'll move this one over again. And I mean, at this point you can kind of line them up if you want to. I mean, you notice they're kind of snapping in on one another. Because we did this without changing around our perspective via the camera controls, you're going to find that they snap into place really easily, but more importantly, they scale much, much easier. So now I've got all 3 of my shots here. And as you notice, when you do a cut paste inside of an actual Photoshop document, it cut and paste them as a discrete layer. So I can just go ahead and rename these. I just double click on the title. I'll call this one front, side, and back. Now this is the easy part. This is going to kind of blow you away. So there is a tool here, and this is underneath your eraser, called the background eraser tool. So if all you see is the eraser, just click here and hold down and go to the background eraser tool. This is way easy. So you notice I've got like a circle with a crosshair in the middle of it. If I hold down Alt, it turns into an eyedropper, which is basically trying to determine what color is actually the background. So I'll make sure that my front is the layer that's selected. I'll hit Alt to get my dropper, and I'll click to get that color. Now watch how easy this is. I'm just going to erase the background. And you can kind of see where it's important to have a color that doesn't really occur on your avatar, because look at this. It's just removing all that ugly neon green, and I'm just going to remove every piece of it. I'm not going to try and go out into the rest of the sides here and do all that manually, because that's just making more work for yourself, and you'll see why. There we go. So I just erase a nice corner around. Ooh, I missed the underarm here. It's okay if you miss that. You can just go right back and edit it out. So I've removed all that green. And all we'll do is we'll hit our magic wand, click on our green, and it selects the green for us. Hit delete, and done. Oop. Now we have no more background. We have no more of that green. We have just my character on a transparent background. So we'll go ahead and we will do this for, you gotta define your background every time. So we'll go ahead and just remove the background here again. And I don't know if you could see, but there was a little bit of green like showing through her hair for some reason, and this thing just took it right out. Because her hair isn't green and nothing on her is green, I can just erase right over bits and pieces of her and it doesn't matter. I don't have to be exact. I just get what I need, get the major parts, and let the magic wand take care of the rest. And we'll go ahead and do that for the back. And as you can see, I mean, this is not going to take up, the entirety of this document. This is a pretty big canvas that I'm working with, but I'm a dirty furry, and I got a whole bunch of characters with some large tails, so they tend to take up quite a bit of space when you put them on their side. Let's trace up and get that little bit of green in between the fingers. Don't forget about that. And this does a suitable job for around the hair. You may notice a little bit of halo around hair sometimes. If you really want to get rid of that, if it's really that important, there's ways of doing it, and I'm sure YouTube could help you out with that. So the next thing I do is I use my move tool. I'm going to go ahead and move the front, and I try and just position the character on that bottom line, my ground line, as close to where I think their feet would be if they were really standing there. Now you'll notice that because of how our camera turned, the front and the side are practically the same, but the back is much, much smaller. As you can see, she's much, much shorter. So one of the things I like to do here is I'd like to go take the back layer and go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And if you do that with just the layer selected, it will expand only the data inside of that layer. Now before you do anything else, make sure you come up here and you click what looks like a chain for the options here, which is Maintain Aspect Ratio. So we'll click that, because if we don't, then you'll make her skinnier, fatter, whatever. We don't want to do that. So I'm just going to grab the corner and I'm going to make her a little bit taller on the back. And then I just click the Marquee because it immediately asks you, hey, do you want to apply the transformation? Absolutely. Now, in this case, she's pretty much spot on for how tall she should be, but I'll show you how to take all of these layers and expand or contract them at will. So what you can do is you can just go over to your layers here and hit Control and click and select all the layers that you want to expand. And hit Edit, Transform, Scale, and notice it's only the data in all of those layers. Now you can click here, Maintain Aspect Ratio, remember that, and make her as tall or short as you want her. And she's about 5'2", so I'll put her about there. I'll click my Marquee again, hit Apply, done. That's as easy as it gets. So the nice thing about having this is you've got a transparent background now. So let's say you wanted a post-apocalyptic setting. This is one of my favorite pictures from San Diego. It was a cloud that looked like a big old mushroom cloud. I mean, you could, if you really wanted to, if you're so inclined, put that in the background. If you really wanted to. You could put whatever you wanted. You could put her in the middle of a cartoon show. Doesn't matter. What I would recommend is for model sheets, just to keep the background transparent. When you print it out, it will be white. And depending upon your browser, when you save it, it'll be transparent, so whatever the background is. In IE, it'll be white. The newer Firefoxes, it'll actually be kind of black, so you may want to maybe save it with a white background. But that's pretty much it. I mean, it's simple stuff. It's really that background eraser tool is the key there. And then just knowing that you've got to have that green box inside of Second Life that makes life so much easier. And you can have a really high quality model sheet that you can group the layers, you can do whatever you want to, but more importantly, you can take this to somebody, you can put them in front of them and say, hey, here's my character, can you help me visualize this character? And here's a really high quality model sheet that you can use for your reference. So I hope this was helpful.